Welcome to the Small Business Tax Savings Podcast, your weekly dose of accounting and tax tips specific to small business owners. You will be on your way to growing your business and paying the least amount in taxes as legally possible. Here's your host, Mike Jesowshek, CPA.
Hello and welcome. Today we're talking about the top 10 mid-year tax saving strategies that every small business owner must know. And when we're talking about mid-year, we're talking about the middle of the year. Can you believe it's already July? Over half the year is over. And so the good thing is what we're going to be talking about today are those tax strategies that you should be thinking about, those tax strategies that you can do. Because I know there's a lot of people listening to this that started off in January saying, I'm going to do tax plan this year. I'm going to make this the year I do tax planning. But now we're in July and they haven't done anything yet. They haven't implemented strategies yet. And so my hope is that this is your opportunity to say, okay, now this is that motivation I need to jump over that hoop and start tax planning here mid-year in 2023. So let's go through. Let's dive right into it. First things first, you need to conduct a mid-year tax review. Now that we're halfway through the year, do a tax review. How many strategies have you learned so far this year? How many strategies have you implemented? Now, for probably a lot of people, that might be a high number saying, oh, yeah, I've learned a lot. I've implemented a lot. And for you, great. Continue to listen because we're going to continue to feed those strategies to you. But for others, that number might be zero. That number might be less than 5. And so what we talked about back in July, in an episode we did called, how can you set up your business for success in 2023? We said, if you start learning and thinking about tax planning in January, you're going to set yourself up for success to make 2023 the year that you pay the least amount in taxes legally possible. But now we're in July. The good thing is that we still have plenty of time left, but we need to take action on it. If you've put in minimal effort so far this year, make sure that the second half of the year, you actually take some time to learn. You actually take some time to implement those tax strategies. We have a ton of resources. We have our small business tax savings podcast if you prefer to listen and learn. We have our small business tax savings blog if you prefer to read and learn. And we have small business tax savings TV if you prefer to watch and learn. Whatever your method of learning is, we have a source for you. And so we recommend take the time now, mid-year, still plenty of time, but make it a point to actually hit the ground running because a lot of those people back in January said, yeah, we're going to start in January and do this. And here we are in July with nothing being done. So take this time. A mid-year tax review basically just helps you identify kind of where you at. What things have changed? Have you had a massive increase in profit this year from your business, maybe that you didn't expect? Have you had a decline in profit this year? Where are you at from a profit and loss standpoint? Review your financials. Where are you from a balance sheet? Do you have more W-2 income this year? Did, a spouse change their job? Do you have a new child? Do you have a child that has grown up to a different age that may qualify some more tax savings? So do a review of kind of where you at today. How's the business performing? How you at on estimated taxes? That's going to give you a clear picture of your business finances. A key part of tax planning is knowing, okay, where is our profit going to be? Because, hey, if you're not making any income, if you're going to show zero profit in your business, there's not much tax planning to do because you're not making any money, so there's no taxes on it. But for other people, they're going to have profit and we need to know how much, where's that profit going to be? Where can we estimate that to be? Because that's going to let us know, okay, what should we do? What kind of strategies should we implement? So first things first, conduct a mid-year tax review and then use that data, use that information you have to start that planning for what kind of strategies we need to implement and learn here before the end of the year. The next piece is maximizing deductions. And deductions are simply just a way to reduce your taxable income. What can we do to reduce the amount of income that you're showing through deductions? And there's common ones, your typical operating expenses, your labor, your cost of goods sold, your software that you need to run your business. Those are all good and valid. But we also want you to be thinking deeper. How can we even move some after-tax spending into pre-tax spending? If you're like, Mike, what's after-tax? What's pre-tax spending? We did a whole series on this earlier. We talked about how you can maximize advertising and office expenses, gift deductions, employee benefits, how to really maximize meals and travel. And then we also talked about how to avoid an IRS audit as a business owner. So we talk a lot about this idea of maximizing deductions And I think this is an area that so many small business owners miss out on. They miss out on this idea of maximizing deductions. They think maximizing deduction is going to buy a truck I don't need, or going to buy a new piece of equipment that I don't really need, but I get a tax deduction for it. That's not what we're talking about. That's a losing situation unless, of course, you need that type of equipment or that new truck or whatever it might be. What we're talking about with maximizing deductions, how can we get creative? How can we utilize the tax law the way it's written to move spending that we're already doing, but now finding a business purpose for it to bring that spending instead of being an after tax spending we do after that's money being taxed? How can we bring that spending into the business and get a pre tax deduction for that spending that we're going to do anyways? And so there's a lot of different strategies that kind of evolve around that concept. Again, we did a whole series on this. We talk about this a lot. So definitely check that out. The maximizing deductions is a huge area that a business owner, regardless of your size, should be taking advantage of. The third one is review entity setup and tax structure. Now, when we talk about the foundation of your business, that's going to be your entity structure. Are you a sole prop? Are you an LLC? Are you a partnership? Are you a C corp? Are you an S corporation? Whatever it might be, review your entity structure and make sure that that entity structure still makes sense for you and your business today. Go through a quick example. Let's say you're a sole proprietor. You just started out last year. Kind of got this idea off the ground, didn't really know how much revenue and didn't know how much income it was going to produce. You're like, I'm just going to start as a sole proprietorship. Last year, just kind of got rolling, not much activity. All of a sudden this year, you hit the ground running. Maybe you are someone that does concrete for business and you just kind of did a few jobs at the end of last year. And now you're doing a ton of concrete jobs. You're starting to roll in a lot of money. You're probably looking at some good profit. Well, we might want to do an entity structure. That sole proprietorship might not be the best fit for you. Maybe an LLC with an S corp makes sense. Maybe not. But that's what we want to do is pause and think about that. I always say, do you expect your business to profit $50,000 or more this year? If so, you might want to start thinking about an S corporation. An S corp election might make sense for you. Even if it's S corp doesn't make sense, maybe going from a sole prop to an LLC might make sense this year because you might want to look into an S corporation later in the year or maybe next year, and having that LLC structure is going to help make that easier. So do a review of your entity setup and tax structure. If you haven't looked at our series on S corporations, definitely go and check that out. taxsavingspodcast.com/S corps. So definitely check out that. The next piece we want to talk about is retirement planning. I think as small business owners, this is an area that we tend to not think about as often. We're so intertwined with running our business that we don't think about, what's going to happen 20 years down the road or wherever you are out from retirement. We don't think about those things, but we want to. And there's also some tax structure and tax planning opportunities around retirement that may or may not be a good fit for you. So do some digging into that. We do an annual episode every year with Matt Ruttenberg over at Life Inc. where we talk about different retirement structures, plans that might make sense to you. Whether you have employees, the plans that make sense for you for those business owners that have employees. Maybe if you don't have employees, what plans might make sense for you. So, we're looking at SEP IRAs, solo 401ks, maybe a safe harbor 401k, maybe a simple IRA, a lot of options out there. It really just comes down to who are we taking care of? Is it you and your employees, or is it just you and no employees? And how much money do you want to put away towards retirement? Now's a great time to think about that retirement plan. What plan do we want to have? And what plan can we start to get that process started to start implementing those? We did an episode earlier this year on retirement planning. So if you're like, I think now's the year that I want to do retirement. And actually, now's a great year, especially with some of the new credits that came out. But think about retirement planning. Is it time to now start that retirement plan? Look it up, do some research, find out the plan that makes sense to you, and get that implemented so you can fund it this year still. The next piece is learning tax strategies. You know, our podcast, our blog, our YouTube channel, they are all solely designed to provide you with strategies that you need to pay the least amount of taxes as legally possible. Some of the topics that we discuss on our podcast, blog, YouTube channel that we talk about are entity structures, S corporations, maximizing deductions. We dive into a bunch of different areas of maximizing deductions. We talk about retirement plans. We talk about real estate investing for tax savings. This could be long-term real estate investing. This could be short-term real estate investing, and how that can not only be an investment, but an excellent tax strategy as well. We talk about hiring your kids or your family members in your business and the 14-day home rental rule, maybe having a board and setting up a board and having board meetings and travel expenses and all those things involved in it. We talk about how do we do all this, but also being able to sleep at night, knowing that we got our ducks in a row to ensure that we can avoid an IRS audit. We talk about automobile or equipment purchases. We've talked about the accountable plan, capitalization policies, strategies related to health insurance, self-employed health insurance, health savings accounts. Maybe if you have high medical costs, what can you do from a tax standpoint to help offset that? We talk about year-end strategies, and that's just kind of the start of it. We talk about so much on our resources that we provide to you guys. So start learning, start listening, start watching, start reading, whatever way you like to learn. Dive into this free content that we are constantly putting out for you business owners with the sole purpose of it is to help you understand and know the strategies that are available to you to pay the least amount in taxes as legally possible. Whether you're making $1,000 a year or $1 million a year, these strategies are available to you. They're easy to understand, easy to implement, and that's what our specialty is to peel these strategies that oftentimes are hard to understand, peel them apart and make them easy for you to understand. So learn tax strategies, dive into these resources that we have. And then that leads into the next step, implement tax strategies. We always talk about learning tax strategies, but that's just one thing. That's just the first part. We want you to understand the strategy. The second and probably more important piece is putting those to work through implementation. That's where you start to see the fruit of the savings. You start to see, okay, I'm learning, I'm implementing. Oh, and now my tax bill is going down. So we can't just stop at learning. We need to take that thing all the way through the end and actually implement these strategies. A little tip that I have, it could be as simple as keeping a notebook or maybe just a note on your phone of all the strategies that you're hearing. So you listen to an episode we talk about retirement, you're like, oh yeah, I think this plan's going to make a lot of sense for me. Great. Put a note on it. We talk about hiring your kids. You're like, oh, I think that might be good for me. Great. Put a note, in a notebook, a note on your phone, something like that. And then put a meeting on your calendar once a month, a 2 hour long meeting on your calendar once a month where you review those notes and then put them to action. So you might have that meeting come up on your calendar. You're like, okay, this is the tax implementation meeting at first Thursday of every month. You get that meeting note. I wrote down setting up a retirement plan. Okay, let's contact Matt Ruttenberg over at Lake Think. Let's contact our financial advisor to start up a retirement account. So the simple strategy that I recommend is keep a notebook or a note in your phone of the strategies that you hear us talk about that are interested to you and you could qualify for, and then put a monthly meeting on your calendar where you're going to remind yourself to look back at that note and say, okay, now that meeting, that monthly meeting on your calendar is where you take those strategies that you've learned and actually implement them. Next thing we want to talk about is taking advantage of tax credits. Tax credits directly reduce your tax liability and can really save you tons in money. You can claim tax credits for things like hiring new employees. Maybe there's energy tax credits. Maybe it's a new car. Maybe it's some type of solar system panel, something like that. Maybe even just creating, accessibility features for disabled employees or customers. There's a lot of opportunities for tax credits. So check those out. Understand what's there. There's also we did an episode earlier this year on tax credits around setting up a retirement plan. So we talked about a retirement plan earlier today. Maybe now is the time. Well, there's some tax credits out there that are available to you today that can make that starting a retirement plan even more advantageous to you. So think about some of the tax credits that are out there. The next piece is planning for estimated taxes and knowing your tax obligations. This is part of that first thing, that kind of tax review. Where are you at today? Have you made $100,000 midway through the year here? Okay. Have we made estimated taxes? If not, let's start looking at what is that potential tax liability that we're going to have. Let's make note of that. Let's do some planning. Let's put some money aside. Let's think about the estimated taxes we need to make and actually make them. Let's think about the tax strategies that we can implement, learn and implement, and reduce that tax liability. So, hey, we're doing really well. We're midway through the year, have a profit so far this year of $100,000, but we didn't implement this strategy or this strategy. Well, that profit might go down to 70,000 or 60,000 just via some tax planning. Start to look at your tax obligation. What do you predict your tax liability is going to be? And make sure you're paying estimated taxes to help avoid penalties and interest on underpayments. Another thing that comes into mind when we talk about this tax obligations is if you're paying contractors, contractors to do work for you, independent contractors, make sure you're grabbing a W-9 from them. At the end of the year, you're going to have to send a 1099 to all of your contractors. And in order to send that 1099, you're going to need a copy of their W-9. Now is a great time to do a little reconciliation, ensuring that you have a W-9 on file for all of your contractors. The next piece is strategic business investments. We talked about this idea of maximizing deductions and how it's not go buy a vehicle to save taxes or go buy new equipment to save taxes. We would never advise someone to do that. But you might need a new vehicle. You might need some new equipment in your business. That's a great tax strategy. That's a great way to reduce your tax bill is when you need these items, we can use depreciation in our favor when we want to, when we need to help lower our tax bill. So just keep that in mind. As we're getting midway through the year, is there any kind of equipment that you're going to need in your business coming up? Start to think about the purchase of that and putting that into practice, putting that vehicle, that equipment into work before year end to make sure you get that tax deduction this year on it. The final piece that we want to talk about today is keeping accurate records. We talk about so often about how bookkeeping is the backbone of your business. Keeping an accurate bookkeeping file, which includes a balance sheet, which includes a profit and loss or an income statement. Bookkeeping is the backbone of your business. Are you caught up so far this year? Are you caught up on your bookkeeping from January until now? If so, great. You're doing well. Now, I would say if you're caught up, make sure you're using that data. Analyze your financials to understand where you're at today and how it can help your business. But I think there's probably a lot of people watching this, listening to this that are not caught up. Take the time now. Get caught up for the year. Take some time, get caught up from January through June, and spend the rest of the year continuously once a week, once every other week, once a month at a minimum, updating those financials and using that data to your favor. Again, this is going to give you a clear picture of, okay, for tax planning, what are we even looking at? What's our profit even looking like? What kind of tax plan do we want to implement? Because far too many people, they do their bookkeeping in January, in February for the prior year, and they see a big profit on there. And when you get to that point in time, there's nothing they can do. Very minimal. There's some strategies available after year end that we talk about, but there's very minimal they can do after the year is over to help reduce that tax liability. Keep good records, keep your receipts, do your bookkeeping so that you're caught up now and you have a good picture of where you are so that you can properly plan. Again, we're midway through the year. The first year flew by, and guess what? The second part of the year is going to fly by just as fast as the first did. Take some time now. Let's go through these top 10 mid-year tax saving strategies that you must know. First, conduct a mid-year review. Where you at? Where are you going? Making sure that you are understanding tax strategies, implementing tax strategies. Again, we have our small business tax savings podcast. We have our small business tax blog. We have our small business tax TV. However you want to learn, we have tons of free resources out there. Do a mid-year tax review. Start to maximize your deductions. Review your entity setup and tax structure. Think about retirement planning for either you, your business, your employees, whatever makes sense in there. Learn tax strategies. Take some time to learn tax strategies, but don't stop there. Then implement it. Put some time on your calendar where you're actually implementing these tax strategies that you're learning and taking the time to learn. Put them into practice because learning them doesn't save you anything. Implementation is where the tax savings comes from. Take advantage of tax credits that are out there. We talked about retirement tax credits, some hiring employees. Maybe you're doing some energy type stuff. Look at the tax credits and see if there's something available to you based on the activities that you're doing. Plan for estimated taxes and know your tax obligations. Now that we're doing that tax review, we're doing it, we're keeping up to date on our bookkeeping. Plan for estimated taxes. Send in those money to avoid penalties and interest. Maybe you have some business investments coming up, some vehicles, equipment that you need in your business, not want, but need in your business. You might want to be looking at starting to look at the buying process of that and making sure you're able to put that piece of equipment, machinery, vehicle into business before the end of the year. And finally, again, keep accurate records. I hope this was helpful. My goal with this kind of mid-year tax saving strategies is to hopefully remind you like, oh my gosh, we're halfway through the year and I haven't done anything. I hope that this is enough to say, okay, let's kick it into gear. Let's start to learn those tax strategies. Let's start to implement them. Maybe go through previous episodes. Look at episodes we've done in the past year, 2 years. Find ones that are specific to you, that are helpful for you, and start to implement those. I can guarantee that regardless of your business size, regardless of where you're at, that you will find a gold nugget in every weekly episode that we do. So start to listen, subscribe to our channels, start to listen, watch, read everything that we're putting up there. And again, learn and implement tax strategies. So hopefully this was helpful. I'm excited to hear the stories about the listeners, the watchers that have saved so much in taxes from the stuff that we teach you. I want to thank you for listening to another episode, and I will see you next week.
This has been another episode of the Small Business Tax Savings Podcast. If you enjoy our weekly episodes, please leave a review and share with other business owners. You can find previous episodes and more information at www.taxsavingspodcast.com. Thanks for listening and have a great day.